What is going on, RotoGrinders? Dean here. It's Dean704 if you want to get all technical on me in the DFS space. Of course, this is not a DFS-centric show. This is Sports Card Grinders, where we talk, you guessed it, sports cards. We're going to bring in our panel, our prestigious panel. Batting first is one Geoff Wilson. You know him from SportsCardInvestor. What's going on, Geoff? How are things in your world?
Things are great, man. Things are real well. Thank you.
Good to hear that. Returning champion. Our returning champion from last week is Brennan Ruby. Brennan, how are things with you? And what do you? I guess you have to defend your crown. I don't know why I made you champion. Somehow you did Simon in my head. Simon is lost somehow. But how we doing?
I appreciate that. No, I'm doing good. I finished the Last Dance documentary and I moved straight on to the Magic Moment with Shaq and Hardaway. So I've gone down a rabbit hole of sports documentaries. So luckily there's enough 30 for 30s to last me a long time.
Don't give any spoilers because Simon hasn't watched the whole thing. You haven't watched it all, right, Simon?
No, I still got a few episodes left of Last Dance.
All right. I think it turns out well for Jordan, just a heads. I guess that was a spoiler. The statute of limitations are up. Of course, you guys know Simon Edwards, who works here at the producer. He's a utility man, jack of all trades. Simon, how are things in your world?
Doing good. Looking forward to talking some sports cards.
Yes, sir. We're going to be talking about we'll talk about Geoff's virtual sports con in just a second, as well as we're going to delve into some MLB players that are some potential buys. I threw out some names, and you guys are going to tell me because I don't pretend to be a sports card aficionado. I used to back in the day, but now I'm just a total novice. I'm a total noob, and I'm happy to ask some questions. You guys tell me if I'm onto something. You guys tell me if I'm wrong. And then we're going to talk about the art of card flipping as well. But before we do all that, we do want to talk about – well, Geoff, I should throw it to you because RG, of course, we have a deal here with SportsCardInvestor.com. You get 20% off your first payment of subscription to the SCI, the Market Mover subscription, and just put in the code Grinders, and you get 20% off. And Geoff, sell me on it. Tell me why I need this. Tell me why I can use it, how I can apply it into my sports card needs.
Sure. So I built the only data tool in the world that gives you up-to-the-minute information on how prices are changing in the hobby, allows you to chart out what's going on, see charts of all different sports cards and how their prices are changing. And most importantly, identify buying opportunities, because the people who are actively using my tool, Market Movers, are often able to find really good buying opportunities, cards that the charts show there's opportunity to latch onto because that card is probably going to go up in the weeks ahead. And so that is my Market Movers data tool.
All right. Before we start talking about card flipping, I'm going to stay with you, Geoff. But tell me what's the deal? What is this virtual sports card convention? What is that?
Yeah, so one of the big events in the sports card world, actually the biggest event in the sports card world every year, is what's called the National Sports Collectors Convention. It is a absolutely humongous convention where there are hundreds and hundreds of sports card and memorabilia dealers from around the nation that come together and throw this giant card show. Last year was in Chicago. I went to it. It honestly is so big that you have to be there for at least a couple full days in order to see everything, if not more. That's how big it is. Thousands, tens of thousands of people come to this thing from all over the country. This year was supposed to be in Atlantic City at the end of July and the beginning of August. Unfortunately, obviously, due to the circumstance everyone's in, they have postponed the show, and they're hoping to do it in December now. They're not sure if it will fully happen or not, but that's what they're hoping. This, however, is a blow for sports card dealers all over the nation who depend on this show as a major source of revenue for them every year. It's also a blow for, of course, just the sports card community who loves to go to shows like this. So since I've got a large YouTube following at SportsCardInvestor, I decided that we would do a virtual sports card con, so a virtual card show for the same original 5 days that the National was scheduled for at the end of July and the beginning of August. We're going to get a lot of the dealers who are going to go to the National, but we're going to bring them onto our live stream, and we're going to have them show off the cards that they otherwise would have had for sale at the National, and people will be able to buy those cards in real time. So it should be a really fun event, and it's totally free, 100% free to attend, as well as 100% free for dealers to exhibit at. It's just something we're doing to try to lift up the community. You can go to my website, SportsCardInvestor.com, to register for it. You do need to register. Go to SportsCardInvestor.com and click on the Virtual 2020 in the main menu bar.
That sounds like good times. That's like a great idea as well, just adjusting to the circumstances. I'm just curious. You mentioned you've been going there and you talk about thousands of people going. And I'm just brand new as far as getting back into the industry peripherally. Just from what I see, it feels like it's getting more popular. It's gaining some steam. How long have you been going to this convention, and have you noticed it getting bigger and bigger? I'm curious.
Oh, it absolutely has. So last year, so they've done the convention for 41 years. I think this would have been their 41st year. And last year was the second highest in attendance ever.
Wow.
And that includes through the whole junk wax era when sports cars were at their absolute boom. There was only 1 year in the last 40 years that had more attendance than this past year. And a lot of people thought that had this year's convention not been postponed, that it would have broken the all-time record in terms of attendance. So it just speaks to what's happening in the hobby overall. I mean, it's the number of cards bought and sold on eBay every day has gone up and up and up and up. And prices have gone up and up with it. And so those of you who have been fortunate enough to buy some sports cards and hold on to them in recent months have seen those cards double in value, triple in value, or more, depending on what the card is.
Is there one thing you can point to? I'm just like, that makes you think that why? Well, why all of a sudden? Why is it gaining this huge momentum in the last so many years?
Well, there's a lot of factors. It's first of all, if you collected sports cards when you were a kid and you're coming back into it now and you're kind of starting to check it out again, it's so much better done. And they've fixed so many of the problems that they used to have. For example, right now you've got grading, which helps you ensure the quality of a card. It also adds scarcity by the fact that cards are graded. A lot of the more prestigious cards are serial numbered. So that also helps with scarcity and ensuring that you don't have a card that's been reproduced a zillion times. Cards are much better designed these days, and a lot of the higher end cards have on-card autographs and players of the player's jersey patch. So they're much nicer to look at. The whole card market is liquid. Whereas when when I used to collect as a kid, you could buy these price guides that would suggest what a card was worth, but you couldn't really sell it for that price. I mean, who were you going to sell it to? But today you can literally buy and sell cards on eBay. You could buy a card today on eBay and then decide you want to sell out of it 3 weeks later and put it on eBay in a one-day auction, and it's sold the next day and you've got the money in your account shortly thereafter. So it's much more liquid, and all of these things have just made it, a much more attractive hobby to get into, or an investment to get into. Some people do it from the hobby perspective for collecting, and some people like me really look at it from an investment perspective and how can I flip cards, or how can I buy certain cards at a lower price and sell them down the road at a higher price.
That's a good segue. We're going to talk card flipping strategy. Brennan, what is card flipping?
So card flipping is another form of investing in sports cards. However, it's typically done on a short time frame. If I buy a LeBron and plan on holding it for 5 to 10 years when he gets inducted into the Hall of Fame, that's more of a long-term investment. If I think a player in the short term will see his value increase, I might buy it. And then within sometimes a couple of weeks or a couple of months, I'll then flip it. An example of that from last season, Nikola Jokic came out really slow out of the gates. And so I invested in a few of his rookie cards, knowing that he just doesn't show up to camp in shape. I mean, he's one of the guys that gets into shape mid-season. And so, I think I had made 3 or 4X on a couple of the cards I bought in a matter of a couple of months, because towards the All-Star break, he started picking it up and his game turned around. And so flipping it is really looking at guys, at least in the short term, that should see a value increase, whether it be good play, or as we've seen with this documentary, their name is more in vogue and in the media, and that attention should drive up their prices. So flipping cards really is looking to make money, in the short term.
Yeah, you mentioned Nikola Jokic. He, as a kid, I think he talked about it. Maybe as a teenager, how he would drink 3 liters of Coke a day. He was a husky kid. If you saw his pictures as a child, like, so this guy's going to be one of the best players in the NBA in like 15 years or 10 years, whatever it is. Like, nah, not happening. But I love Jokic as well. He's one of the most fun players to watch. And you're going to be nostalgic for basketball as is. Simon, how do you apply card flipping strategy? I know you're just buying some stuff. You bought a couple cards the other day. Are those flippers? Are those cards you want to keep around for a while? How do you apply the strategies?
Yeah, more recently, I've kind of spent my bankroll on longer term holds that I want to hold on to. But last week or so, I've been focusing on trying to buy more RPA type cards, autographed rookie cards that I can scan through eBay auctions and try to buy at a cheap price where I can eventually flip it as a buy it now or make me an offer option on eBay. So that's kind of what I've been getting into now. That kind of gives me a reason to buy non-QB football players, wide receivers and running backs and those kinds of cards. Football is my main focus. So it kind of gives me an opportunity to try to buy cheap there on auctions that are have less attention, because most people focus on quarterbacks and then try to get those ignored auctions going and buy cheap there, and then eventually try to flip it on, like make me an offer or buy it now type of sales.
Yeah, you had a couple of things we want to talk about. What is your optimal? What's the best way, your favorite way to buy cards or sell cards? You mentioned buy it now or you make me an offer. What are the pros and cons as far as like decide which route you take?
Well, if I'm going for a more expensive card, I'll typically look for buy it now, make me an offer, and I'll look at the market movers tool to see what the going market rate currently is, and then I'll take that into account and try to make an offer below that price. So if I get someone who bites below that price, I know I'm getting a good deal on it. But when it comes to cheaper cards, I tend to look at these auctions and hoping I'm finding an auction that's getting overlooked, so I can get a cheaper card at a cheaper price, and and then just try to flip that card that way.
Geoff, your thoughts as far as buy it now or as far as auction strategies and things of that sort. And he mentioned the market mover. I believe, are you going to demonstrate the market mover for us and how you apply that when it comes to buying cards?
Yeah, in fact, market movers gives you some advantage when you're trying to find cards to buy it at below market value. In fact, I'll just go ahead and, I know we're going to be talking baseball this episode, so let's take a look at Glaber Torres. Let's take a look at his 2018 Topps update in PSA 10. So this card's been a really hot card. You can see that it was going up and up. It peaked around right before sports paused. So on March the 11th, it peaked and then it came down with a sports hiatus. That's a pattern we saw across a lot of sports cards. However, once we got into April, people started buying up cards again, and we saw the entire sports card market go crazy in April, and Glaber Torres' cards are a great example of that. So you can see right here where his cards are most recently are about $120, right around $120, actually as high as $130 for this particular card. Now the market movers tool, if you click right here where it says for sale on eBay, one of the really cool things we'll do is we'll flip you over to eBay and it will give you really clean listings of just this exact card. And look at this, we have just found a deal, because as you can see in market movers, this card has been selling for between $119 and $132, $121, $137 over the last few days. And here it is on eBay for $114. So you could buy that card right this very minute. It is a new listing. And what you often find on eBay is there are a bunch of eBay sellers out there who do not fully understand the market movements. This guy may have sold a Glaber Torres card a couple weeks ago and sold it for $114. And so now he's like, oh, I got another one. I'm going to put it up for $114. What he doesn't realize, because he doesn't have market movers, is how that card has gone up in value over the course of the last couple of weeks. So he just listed his card for probably $15 below market value. That is an easy card to scoop up right now. And that's one of the things that using market movers, it makes it easy to find deals like that and get some instant value the moment you buy a card.
It's like a stock market. The prices are changing in real time. Did anybody pounce? Has anybody bought it? It's right here. It's for the taking, guys.
Someone's going to buy it real soon. Yeah, someone's going to notice it. But again, it's a new listing, so it probably just recently went up. But I wouldn't be surprised if one of my market movers users finds it, because that's what, that's what a lot of the people who use market movers do. Throughout the course of the day, a number of times a day, they'll kind of check, the graphs and then check, to see what cards are for sale and try to scoop up value cards such as that one.
Brennan, what do you how do you apply as far as buy it now? Is that a preference for you as far as auctions in general? Is there a preference you prefer, or are you just kind of flexible depending on the situation, depending on the card?
From a buying perspective, I look at both to see where I can get the best value. From a selling perspective, if I have a card I know will generate a lot of bids, I'll throw it into auction. Right now, I've actually got a Markelle Fultz out there, which I know he doesn't have a huge market right now. So I've put that at buy it now, best offer. That way I can field the requests. And if I find one that I like, I'll accept it. And if not, I'll hold on to it. So I generally, when selling, look at the player's market. Somebody like Morant, Luka, LeBron, if you throw those into auction, you'll get a lot of action there and people will bid each other up. For a lesser market guy like Markelle Fultz, I'll probably just leave it out there. If something good comes along, I'll take it. I'll pull the trigger. And if not, I'll hold on to it. I like to collect my cards as much as I like to invest them and flip them. I will say that on the topic of new listings, if you take advantage of the saved search feature on eBay, you can get notifications when a card you're looking at goes up for sale, and you can be that first person in there to put in that offer. So what I'll do is, if I'm focusing on a certain player like Karl-Anthony Towns, which we'll talk about later in the episode, I'll look at the cards I want to buy for him, whether it be Prism, Select, Optic, and I'll save those searches. That way, every time I go into the app, I'll get a blue dot knowing that there's a new listing, and I'll look at it. And if it's a price I like based on what Market Movers is showing me, I'll send in an offer. And I've gotten a lot of really good deals that way. The longer those listings sit out there, the more eyeballs on them, and the more chance that someone's going to scoop that Torres up or that undervalued Karl-Anthony Towns up. So I really take advantage of those saved searches. And on certain auctions that I have my eye on, I'll watch those as well. You can hit the little blue heart and watch that auction. And even if you don't buy it, you'll get a good idea of where that auction ended when it's done. You'll get a notification, auction is over, here's the price, and now you'll have a good benchmark as to what that goes for.
Geoff, Simon mentioned he talked about non-quarterback flips, and this is a new concept to me. I don't really grasp it, but can you explain or kind of expand on the idea of, quarterbacks are the head of the team and yada, 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 but why are quarterbacks just so much more desirable than non-quarterbacks?
So you find this type of pattern in every sport in sports card investing. So for example, in baseball, it's the home run hitters that are the most desirable typically. Pitchers in baseball don't tend to get a lot of love. In basketball, it's the 3-point shooters, the guys who are going to have big scoring games. Centers in basketball, especially defensive centers, don't get as much love. And in football, it's really the quarterbacks that are the desirable guys. Defensive players get absolutely zero love in football. Like, people don't really collect their cards or invest in their cards at all. You get a little bit of activity around running backs and wide receivers, but I think people are fearful because their careers are short. Yes, your Emmitt Smiths of the world and your Adrian Petersons of the world, they do hold value. But the next level down of guys doesn't really as much, because they, it's just their careers are shorter and it's seen as a little more of a dispensable position. Whereas the quarterbacks, people kind of lust after the quarterbacks. That's like the head of the team and the captain and the guy who's going to potentially be there for 15 years with the team. Hopefully, the chance to win multiple championships and all that kind of thing. So quarterbacks are typically in football cards what most people are going after. But as Simon said, there's opportunity to find flips in other areas. And if you going into a season as a daily fantasy sports player, if you have your eye on some particular running backs or particular wide receivers who you think are going to have breakout years, and maybe others are sleeping on them a little bit, picking up their sports cards is a great way to go, because then you can see those cards increase in value over the course of the season as their performance goes up.
With all that in mind, do you find yourself being conservative or aggressive when it comes to seeking out non-quarterbacks?
So one thing I recommend for anyone getting into sports cards is to invest in the sports that you know the most about and that you put the most time into. Now, I do love the NFL and I do play fantasy sports, but I do most of my sports card investing in basketball. And I do some in football and I do some in baseball. And I've started to dabble in other sports as well. But most of my sports card investing is centered around basketball. So because of that, when I'm investing in football, I am mainly staying true to the only buy quarterbacks, because that's going to be the lane that I stay in. But somebody who's an active fantasy sports player in football, who knows a lot about football and is, kind of understands the running back and the wide receiver scene really well, there's definitely opportunity there to use that knowledge to buy the next up and coming players.
You stay in basketball mostly because, to me, it seems like the most predictive. It's most predictive from a daily fantasy sport perspective, and also from just a career perspective. You kind of know like who's going to stick around, who's going to do things in the next 10 or 15 years. In football, one injury, especially non-quarterback, or even for quarterbacks too, is that kind of like the thought process? Is like you feel like it's the most predictive route, therefore that's the place you stay in.
I like the analytics around basketball. I've had success using analytics to predict basketball performance. That's one reason. Another reason, as you said, is the lower injury risk. Another thing I really like about basketball is with free agency now, players can switch teams in basketball and group up with other players and find themselves on a championship team. It causes their card prices to shoot up when that happens. We saw it this offseason with Anthony Davis. The moment it was announced that he was going from the Pelicans to the Lakers, that day, his cards went up 250%.
Wow.
And so if you can anticipate who that next free agent's going to be, who might go somewhere, we talked about, we were just talking about Karl-Anthony Towns. He's a wonderful player. He's stuck a little bit in Minnesota in a team that's really not threatening and not making a lot of noise. Now, he is in a long-term contract in Minnesota. But it's certainly not impossible to think that a few years from now, he could be teaming up with some other superstars and being part of some super team. And if that happens, we would see his card prices fly up overnight. And so that's one thing I like about the NBA. You don't see that type of movement as much in the NFL, whereas in the NBA, you certainly do. And the other thing I like as well is the NBA is a global game. And the sports card market is a very global market. So I have bought and sold many cards with China. There's a lot of collectors in China. There's a lot of investors in China. I bought a bunch of cards on eBay from China, sold cards. So it's truly international. There's a lot of European sports card investors who will chase the European players. And so you see that in the sports card hobby.
Close your ears, Milwaukee Buck fans. But I think Giannis Antetokounmpo is good. I mean, look, Giannis seems to love Milwaukee, and Milwaukee, I'm sure, is a fine city. But if you can pick your destination amongst all the NBA cities, you're probably not staying in Milwaukee. Just thought, just throwing it out there. Hey, I'm a Miami Heat fan, so maybe I'm just trying to make the press. Like, come to Miami, man, South Beach. Who doesn't want to have a good time down there? Simon, how do I know when to sell?
That's a good question. I think it just depends on your profit desires. How much money do you want to make off the card, and just a gut feel on when you think the player may have peaked, or if you think he's outperforming, that'd be a good time to sell. For me, with the cards that I'm focusing on right now, I don't plan on holding them longer term, the non-QB cards. So I'm aiming for guys that I think are going to have a breakout season. And then at any point during the season, if I feel like I can get 2 or 3 times what I paid, I'll probably sell.
Brennan, you have a general thought process as far as when you're gonna sell your cards, or it's just sort of case by case?
It is sort of case by case. Simon hit the nail on the head, though. If you've got a certain percentage return you want to make, getting it on the market when it hits that number is a good way of kind of taking the thought process out of it. If your number's 50% and you hit 50%, you put it on the market. Another thing I like to do is take a player from the same draft class and look at their prices compared to the best players in that draft class. So for instance, right now, Jason Tatum might be a good benchmark for the 2017 NBA draft class. If you're investing in someone like Donovan Mitchell, De'Aaron Fox, Markelle Fultz, Lonzo Ball, and they get close to Jason Tatum's price, it might be a good time to sell because Tatum's kind of leading that race right now. So really, it all comes down to what your goals are. Like Simon said, if it's a certain percentage, then you put it on the market for that percentage. If it's a long-term hold, then really, I think you don't worry about the short-term market movements as long as you trust that investment. And so the only other way that I'll typically decide to sell is if a player just goes on a crazy run. So for instance, if you were investing in Jeremy Lin when Linsanity happened, even if you didn't have a number in mind, when you saw that happen, knowing that that's not really the type of player he is, it might be a good time to sell. And then if you want him back, you can probably get him at a cheaper price in the off season or when that hype cools down. So it is kind of a case by case. And as you learn the markets and learn your goals as an investor and a collector, I think you'll kind of figure that out.
All right, let's talk some baseball players. I was tasked, basically asked, give me some players that might take the next step, players that might be worth investing in. And again, to be clear, I am by no means a sports card expert, but I was just I put up a collection of names. I'm going to throw them at you guys. Geoff, you tell me if it makes sense via the marker movers chart. Actually, well, I guess Glaber Torres is one of them we threw out there, and I like him because, well, the Zips projection model absolutely loves him. They've projected for 41 homers this year, 44 the next season, and 44 the next season. 2 seasons ago, he had 24 homers, and he just jumped to 38 homers. He's still just 23 years old. Oh, by the way, he's a Yankee. That I would assume that has to matter. That has to help when it comes to collection. And he's also expected to move to his natural position this year as well. Are those the reasons? Are those part of the reasons, Geoff? And I assume it checks out via the market movers as far as Torres.
100%. I like Torres a lot. I'm right with you on Torres. So a couple things I like about him. Obviously, his age, you mentioned, the projections around him. But you said the fact he's on the Yankees. That's a big deal for 2 reasons. First of all, major media market's going to get lots of attention. Is going to have the chance to star in a major media market. That's going to help his sports card prices for sure. The other thing is the Yankees are one of the favorites to go to the World Series this year. That is also a big deal. I personally most prefer to invest in players who have potential to win a championship ring, because historically, when you go back and look at the graphs of sports card price changes, every single year, whoever's on that championship team is going to see, a lot of the guys on that championship team are going to see their sports cards spike in prices. And so I prefer, if I'm having the chance between a guy like Torres and a guy who has a lot of upside but is on a non-contending team, I'm going to pick the guy on the contending team because I want that opportunity to get the pop through a big playoff run.
All right. Anybody else have any thoughts as far as Torres, or shall I throw out another player? I'm throwing another player.
Oh, actually, just a question to Geoff. If I was looking to buy that player, what brand should I focus on mainly as baseball? I know Topps Chrome is a popular one for people to search for on eBay, but what are some other types that might be good to look for?
Yeah, so baseball cards are definitely different than basketball cards and football cards. So basketball cards and football cards are all made by Panini. So they have brand names like Prism and Optic, whereas baseball cards are made by Topps. And they have brand names like Bowman and Topps. Now, I should say that Panini also does make baseball cards. They actually make Prism baseball cards, but they are unlicensed products. So they have the players without their team logos or without their official team uniforms. For the most part, stay away from those. For the most part, you want to stay with a licensed product. So for baseball, you want to stay with the Topps products. The 2 big cards for any baseball player are going to be their Bowman First Prospect. So that's going to be their prospect card. That's going to be when they were in the minor leagues most often. Their very first baseball card they will ever have is most often a Bowman First Prospect. And then the other card you're going to want their Topps rookie card. Their Topps rookie card, that's the first year they actually made a major league team. That's when they're going to get their official rookie card issued, and you're going to want one of the Topps brands. There's Bowman and Bowman Chrome, and then there's also Topps and Topps Chrome. The Chrome versions tend to be more valuable than the non-Chrome versions, although that's not the case with every player. The market's been a little odd on that recently, but in general, I would go for the Chrome version, the Bowman Chrome or the Topps Chrome. There's also a lot of different refractors where you can get the refractor version of those cards that are numbered to $4.99, or you can get different color versions of the cards. The purples are numbered to $250, that type of thing, which are going to add scarcity, on-card autos, that type of thing. There's some other sets that are worth considering. Topps Sapphire is a kind of an offshoot of the Topps and Topps Chrome set, similar design, except it's just a different type of variation of it. But that's one that's a very limited print run, exclusive set of cards that's become very popular with baseball card investors recently as well.
Reese Hoskins is another guy I think is kind of sort of somewhat interesting. Just because it's my guess that he's dropped because for 3 straight seasons he's stumbled as far as his breakout season. I think it's breakout. 2017 was his first year. This will be going into his 4th season. His WRC plus, his WOBA, and his ISO, his batting average, it's all dipped. His strikeouts have jumped up as well too. So that's not necessarily a great sign, but I still believe the power is real. Fly ball is 50.3% fly ball percentage throughout his career. He's just got to fix his launch angles. 14.3% homer in the fly ball. I think there's plenty of upside in that. Just he's got the power. I refuse to believe the man has the power to bang the ball out of the ballpark. So I think if he can correct his launch angle, he's a guy that can hit 40 homers. And I'm just buying on the low. That's sort of my thought process here, Geoff. I don't know what the community thinks about Hoskins, but I feel like people have soured on him to some degree.
Yeah, well, you would definitely be buying on the low, so that could be potentially a great thing. His Topps Chrome 2018 in PSA 10, so that's a graded card, a gem mint card. That card is most recently selling for $15. Yeah. So compare that to a Juan Soto or a Glaber Torres, whose cards are going to be 10 times that. So you can get Reese Hoskins at 10% of what you could get some of those other guys for. So he's certainly the type of guy that if you think he could, really start playing well again and people could start chasing him again, he's the type of guy who you could potentially see a 10x type return because you could get a bundle of his cards for next to nothing right now.
Yeah. Anybody have any thoughts as far as Reese Hoskins, or shall we move on?
So
I think Dean's going to – oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Brennan.
I was just going to say, as Geoff said, I like to invest in what I know, and baseball's certainly not that. But hearing your guys' explanation of his situation, he would be a great flip opportunity. If you thought this was the year he hit 40 home runs, you buy up a bunch of his card on the cheap before the season, and as soon as that run hits and you see his market go up, you'd sell it because he very well could have you could have the 40 home run season and then go back to his decline the next season. So the fact that he has been in such a slump, he sounds like a great flip opportunity. And that's kind of what you want to look at. If you've got a feed on whether or not he's going to have a breakout season or another breakout season, that's one you might want to flip pretty quickly if his market goes up.
Yeah, Simon, you're going to say?
Yeah, I would just add that this is the value of the market movers tool. Because, I mean, I don't know much about baseball, but if a couple smart guys tell me a couple players that I might want to keep an eye out on, I can go into market movers, look up the Topps Chrome rookie that I'm looking for, and then get a price for it. And then I can go into eBay knowledgeable of what I should be bidding on that card, even though I may not have a background in baseball.
Yeah, I mean, and he had 18 homers in his first season, just 200 plate appearances. Then he followed up with 34. And last year, he wasn't necessarily terrible, but he was disappointing based upon the projections and based upon what people thought they would get out of him. I mean, he had 29 homers, but it was a disappointing season with 29 homers. And he's still young. He's only 27. And again, if he can just correct his launch angle, the power is real. And not just the power, but he's hitting fly balls. So that's how you bang the ball to the ballpark. And so when the fly ball was not particularly high, and I feel like there's an upside to that. Jose Ramirez is another guy who just tailed 2 seasons last year. So there's a stat in baseball called WRC plus, weighted runs created plus, and it neutralizes ballpark. And 100 is the average ballpark. If you have 100 WRC plus, that means you're the average baseball player. If you have 110, that means you are 10% better than the average baseball player. If you have a 90, that means you're 10% worse than the average baseball player. The first half of the season for Jose Ramirez last year, he was 68 as far as WRC plus. He was 32% worse than the average baseball player, which is dreadful. The second half of the season, his WRC plus was 176. He was 76% better than the average baseball player, one of the top numbers in the entire league. This is a man who former top 3 as far as MVP. He's got speed, he's got power, he's got 30-30 potential, and he's also, like, first impressions, people are probably still stung to some degree because they picked him last year in the first round, the second round as far as their season long. But again, he justified, and he came through in the clutch, I'm sure, as far as your playoffs and things like that. But the season, now I'm not saying he's going to be the same guy he was in the second half, but I'm saying he's definitely much more the guy in the second half than he was in the first half. Did I sell you? Geoff, what do you think of Jose Ramirez?
I mean, his cards are cheap too. You can pick up one of his rookie cards with an on-card auto. So a card that he has signed, what would normally be a very rare card, a Topps Chrome on-card auto card, graded PSA 10 gem mint. You could pick that card up for $82.
Buy it right now. I'm telling you, trust me.
And that's a card that, I mean, for an Acuna or anyone like that, I mean, that's going to be, you're in the thousands. So, it's $82. I mean, it's the people have definitely left him behind in the bargain bin and have certainly given up on him. So if he's a guy who you think's got that opportunity to rally, he's another guy that could potentially be a flip opportunity. And Brennan's right. these guys who you're talking about now, this is got flip opportunity all over it. Like, you could buy a bunch of the cards in a lot for very little money, and then you could just sit there, and if he actually starts, the first half of the season he comes out really hot, interest is going up, people are starting to buy his cards, it's an easy flip.
He's still just 27 years old. You go back 3 years, 29 homers, 17 stolen bases, 39 and 34 the year after that, 23 and 24 in his disappointing season last year. And again, I believe he's the guy in the second half, much more the guy in the first half. I don't remember if he was nursing an injury of any sort. Actually, he may have been. Or was that Lindor? I don't recall. They both might have been banged up for Cleveland. That's certainly possible. I meant to check on that. But he only played in 129 games last year, so maybe he was just so bad and kind of beat up in the first half. But again, I don't know anything as far as the card market, but to me, it sounds like a good buying opportunity. I'm in. If I'm buying some cards, I'm buying some Jose Ramirez, and I'm buying some Reese Hoskins on the cheap. Another sales pitch I have for you guys, Austin Meadows. I feel like, Geoff, you're going to tell me Austin Meadows is probably a trendy guy because people are expecting him. He had his breakout season last year after getting traded. One of the worst trades we'll see in I don't want to say the century, but a terrible trade. Like Chris Archer, but he's sort of on the backside of his career. And then Tyler Glasnow and Austin Meadows for Chris Archer. Sorry, Pirates fans. You all got robbed. Meadows broke out last year, and I suspect I don't think it was fluky. But what do we have here as far as the market movers, Geoff, on Austin Meadows?
Yeah, and Austin Meadows prices have actually been going up quite a bit this offseason. People are anticipating a good year out of him this year. His prices, his cards were very affordable. They were around $20 if we go back to February. So even after last season ended, and he had a good season, his cards were still pretty affordable. But as we've gone through these last few months and people are starting to think about players who could become potential stars this year, we've seen his cards go up where in recent days they've been up at $48, $40, etc. So they're still compared to a Glaber Torres, they're still only about a third of his cards. So, they're still quite affordable in the grand scheme of things, but there's definitely been upwards movement and a lot of interest in Austin Meadows.
Yeah, I also wanted to add, like you talked about, being a Yankee has some value. I assume inversely, being a Tampa Bay Ray has some negative value. Just being lost there in Tampa, that doesn't help him. And just from a perspective of what we think is going to happen this year, we don't know, but we can speculate. We think that they're probably going to play a bunch of games in a similar neutral site, and Tampa is not a hitter's ballpark. It's a pitcher's ballpark. And if you take him out of that pitcher's ballpark and put him in the same playing field as everybody else, I imagine it would help him more than it would help a guy like, say, that plays for the Rockies. Is that a rational thought?
I think that's a rational thought. Yeah, that's definitely interesting because people do notice stats, and the stats make the headlines. So, players in hitter-friendly parks have the opportunity to put up splashy stats more often, and that's going to make the headlines in Sports Center and that type of thing more often, and that stuff has a direct correlation to sports card prices.
One more thought on that, by the way, if we do have the universal DH, which that's been speculated as well, too. We don't know anything as far as DH in the National League. Guys like Kyle Schwarber, Ryan Braun, Cespedes, who can't field but probably can be able to hit. He's kind of sort of somewhat interesting. Pollock for the Dodgers. Austin Riley is an interesting one. Uber prospect there for the Braves. And he was really overmatched last year, struck out a ton. I think he had that Pedro Serrano disease. I think he couldn't hit the curveball was his issue. But there's a lot of power there for sure. But, big-time prospect, big-time upside. He looks overmatched, but he's definitely splashed some power. I think that's an interesting thought, Geoff. I don't know if people are delving way too far into it, but, you're going to have an additional guy in the lineup hitting instead of the pitcher, and there's going to be some guys in the National League that take advantage of that. Am I thinking too much about this?
I don't think you're thinking too much about this. There is one difference between daily fantasy sports and sports cards, though, that you do have to consider. There is an exponential premium value placed on the highest level of stars in the sports card world. So the value of sports cards goes up exponentially as your star power goes up exponentially. A lot of daily fantasy sports players think about lineup optimization, and they're trying to find a lot of value, value picks that are going to fill in the lineup and be a good, kind of a good sneaky value pick. In the sports card world, your biggest stars are always going to command the biggest prices, and it's not even close. It's, leaps and multiples above the rest of the guys. So, some of the guys that you mentioned that could be sneaky values at the DH position or something like that, it's got to be more than them just having a good season, a better season than what was expected of them. It's got to be actually a season where they're really making headlines. That's what's really important in the sports card world. You got to be making headlines. You got to be on Sports Center. You've got to be seen. So that's the one thing, just making sure that those players are going to actually have enough exposure and get enough stats up on the board where they're going to get that type of Sports Center exposure.
I got one more baseball player before I stop talking. Lance McCullers. Lance McCullers, really, really good pitcher. Did not play last year for the Astros. They shut him down. He had Tommy John surgery. Still young, still plenty young, only 26 years old. He's got a vicious curveball, one of the best curveballs in the business. And I don't know, Geoff, you tell me. The Astros are hated, right? Like he had nothing to do with that, at least last year. He wasn't in the team. But I'm guessing, you tell me, again, I have no idea. I would feel like the Astros cards, the value, the perception, and just the Astros as a brand probably was hurt by their whole scandal.
Yeah, it was less than you would think. There are a lot of people, like when I do YouTube videos, I did one on Jordan Alvarez and said that I thought was a good sports card to buy, good baseball card to buy going into this season. And there were a number of people in my comments who were like, I will never buy an Astros card again. Yeah. That's awful advice. No one's going to be buying his cards. His cards have been pretty hot. They've been going up. People are buying his cards. So that's maybe for the guys who were like really the heart of the scandal, maybe they're going to have a hard time for a little while. But some of the players who are a little bit more on the auxiliary, like as you said, a pitcher, or a guy like Alvarez who, only came up to the majors I believe it was last season, he came up to the majors. And I think it was only about halfway through last season, right? So he kind of only caught maybe the tail end of all of that. So, I don't know that I would not be worried or at least as worried as some people would tell you should be about buying Astros players.
Alvarez, 27 homers last year and 369 at-bats. And this is a really tiny incremental increase as far as his value. But again, if there is a universal DH, when the Astros were in the National League last year, he wasn't playing. Like he wasn't playing most games. They held him out. So that would get him an extra, 25, 30 at-bats or whatever it may be, which doesn't seem like a lot, but that's 2, 3, 4 more homers. Who knows? So add to the total, sure, why not? Simon, did I sell you? Brennan, did I sell you? Have you guys bought your Jose Ramirez cards? Has I been ignoring you this whole time?
Yes, the Jose Ramirez, I'm definitely going to be checking out after this. I got to see if that card's still available, if Dean hasn't cornered the market yet. So we'll have to see.
You and Brennan are going to be bidding it against each other. I hear Brennan typing away. Is that what's going on over there?
No. I like I said, I don't know much about baseball, so I'm going to try to limit my exposure there. But what you're doing with these players is exactly what I do in basketball. You look for guys that you think can make that jump, as Geoff said, from maybe a minor star to a big star, or no star at all to an absolute star. Tatum recently made that leap in the NBA, and so if one of these guys makes that leap, Dean, you're going to be very happy. Your bank account's going to be very happy. So I'm rooting for you, but I'm going to sit this one on the sidelines.
I mean, we're right. We just gave you expert advice. Me and Geoff combined. You weren't listening the whole time? All right. Fair enough. Understood. But remember this conversation when Jose Ramirez wins goes 40-40 this year or something like that. Sure, why not? Now I'm asking you guys some questions. Some players you like. Brennan, you tell me first. Sell me on somebody.
Sure. So I have recently transitioned away from guys I think will do well if the playoffs happen in the NBA. And I've moved towards guys I think might break out next year or see their values increase next year. And one of those guys for me, we talked about him earlier, is Karl-Anthony Towns. And there's a couple of reasons why I think that could be. One, Geoff talked about it. He's been stuck on a terrible Minnesota Timberwolves team, and he might be there for several more years. He's got a long-term contract. That being said, Wiggins is gone. They brought in D'Angelo Russell. They brought in some shooters, Hernan Gomez and Beasley from Denver, and they're really running that offense through Karl-Anthony Towns. And D'Angelo Russell is a much better distributor than Wiggins was. So I think the chemistry there will be much better. And if you look at Karl-Anthony Towns' production as of, the first 5 years of his career, it is almost identical to Anthony Davis, a fellow Kentucky big man. Anthony Davis is in the first 5 years averaged 22.4 points, Towns 22.7. Davis had 10.2 rebounds, Karl-Anthony Towns 11.8. And Towns actually had more assists, 2.8 to 1.8. That's up to 4 assists this past season. So he's not just your traditional defensive big man. He's actually very offensively skilled. And what's more surprising is despite being stuck on a terrible Minnesota team, his net rating is identical to Anthony Davis the first 5 years. Davis also on a pretty bad Pelicans team, but despite that, both of them had a net rating, offensive to defensive rating of plus 12. So if you can keep going down the line with the advanced statistics, Karl-Anthony Towns had an offensive box score plus minus of 4.8 compared to Anthony Davis at 4.2. So what I'm trying to say is Towns has been very, very good. He's just been buried in Minnesota. And with the new kind of situation they have there in Minnesota, he could have a breakout this year. Or like Geoff said, when he's 27, 28, he might demand a trade. He might leave in free agency, join a super team, and all of a sudden we see his values go up. He very much has the talent. He just hasn't had the situation. And another cool thing that Basketball Reference does is compare your career to that point to other players. And the list is littered for Karl-Anthony Towns with guys like Olajuwon and Shaquille O'Neal, and the list goes on and on. So, I think he's being a little bit overlooked because of who he plays for. And I think that very much could change here as of late. I'll throw in one more name, and this is something I like to do. Luka Doncic is a very popular card right now. And if he has the success people think that he's going to have his own Scottie Pippins and Dennis Rodmans. And one of those guys could be Kristaps Porzingis. Kristaps Porzingis at one point was one of the best players in the league. And he got injured. He got traded. He's been a little bit out of focus right now. But if the Mavericks have as much success as we think they are, I think Porzingis will directly benefit from that.
Geoff, you said you focus mostly on basketball. So what are your thoughts?
Well, I like those picks. I do think that Karl-Anthony Towns probably needs to get out of Minnesota to get somewhere. But Porzingis is an interesting pick. Luka is I think probably a great long-term investment, although his card prices are already pretty significant. They already reflect that. Personally, I've been buying on the basketball front. I've been buying a lot of Giannis. Giannis is the guy that I had most heavily been investing in basketball. And the reason is a couple-fold. First of all, the Bucks have a very good shot of getting to the NBA Finals this year. Giannis has a very good shot of getting his first ring. That would be huge for his card prices. It's going to be easier for Giannis to get there in the East than it would be for anyone to get there in the West. So I like the fact that he's got more of a clear path to get to the finals, especially with the 76ers kind of dropping off this year. And then the other thing I like about it is, as was discussed earlier, Giannis may not be in Milwaukee in a couple of years. There was a rumor the other day that maybe he would end up going to Golden State or something of that nature. But if he ends up, on some sort of super team somewhere and he goes on to win multiple rings, he's already won an MVP. This guy is an all-world talent, one of the best couple of players in the entire NBA. And I like his cards for that reason. I think they're still undervalued. Part of the reason why I think his cards are undervalued is because of the population count. And this is an important, thing for people to think about. Population count is the number of cards that were printed or graded from a particular year. And in Giannis's rookie year, 2013, there were not very many basketball cards made. Basketball cards in 2013, there were far, far, far fewer made than there were last year with Luka, or especially this year with Zion. And I mean, you're talking multiples. Like I think you're talking 20% as many Giannis rookie cards in existence as Luka rookie cards, and that actually may be more of even a difference than that. And especially when you compare it to Zion, I mean, it's probably it might be 10% as many Giannis rookie cards in existence as Zion rookie cards that are being printed this year. So that's another factor to come into play. And when you add that in, that really, to me, makes Giannis an outstanding investment.
Simon, who do you have for us?
Well, in my article this week, I mentioned that I was looking at kind of a tandem of Deante Johnson and Juju Smith-Schuster. But throughout the week, I've been looking on eBay at these auctions, and the more I look, the more I like Deante Johnson. He had a great season last year. He actually outperformed Juju. He played a few more games than Juju, but given that Deante was a rookie, I'd say he outperformed him. And he's got Ben coming back. Ben makes wide receivers into superstars. Look what he did with Mike Wallace, and look what he did with Antonio Brown and even Juju himself. So I think Deante's set up to have a big season. And his cards are pretty cheap. You can get his Contenders Optic rookie autograph for about $10. So I've been trying to scoop up some of those. I also invested in a flawless out of 5 rookie patch of Deante. It's got the Steelers emblem on it. I probably paid a little bit too much for it, but I bought it for under $60. So if you look at this card, Devin's probably got it on the screen right now. It's a really nice looking card, and I think $60 is a good price for it. I think if he ends up having a big season like I'm anticipating, then I think that card could be worth significantly more than that. But also, if you're looking for a quarterback and you want some value, I don't think you can get much more value than Teddy Bridgewater right now. I was looking at his Topps Chrome rookie card. You can get a PSA 10 for under $50. And Teddy Bridgewater is in a perfect situation this year. He's got Robbie Anderson, he's got DJ Moore, he's got Curtis Samuel, and he's got Christian McCaffrey to throw to. So he's loaded with weapons. He's in a good situation. I'm a little bit hesitant with buying him myself. I recommend looking at him if you're looking for value, but I'm not a big Teddy Bridgewater fan in general. But if you can get his rookie card for under $50, that sounds like a pretty good deal for a quarterback in a situation like that. I'd also look at Phillip Walker. If his card wasn't so expensive, he's only got one rookie card that I've been able to find, and that's the Panini Unparalleled. And right now I see it listed at around like $35. I wouldn't want to pay that for a backup quarterback. If you could get him, like in the $10 or less range, I might try to target that. But if you don't have complete faith in Bridgewater to finish out the season, then Phillip Walker would be a good guy to target who would come into a beautiful situation.
You're pinching pennies, right? You wrote an article about it because I guess you splurged all your sports cards money on several cards. I'm not sure if you've shown them off on this about this show, but on previous shows as well. I know there was a piece on that here on the RotoGrinders Network, and I guess show some love. Tell the people about the article you wrote.
Yeah, I wrote an article earlier this week just talking about how I spent most of my bankroll that I'd kind of allotted over the next couple months on bigger names like Zion and Kyler Murray, which I'm going to hold as longer term holds. I got a Kyler Murray red Contenders Optic autograph card that looks like it's in pretty great condition. I'm going to send that one in to get graded, and hopefully, if I get a high grade, I could potentially double the value of that one right off the bat. But I'm holding on to those cards, and now I'm kind of focusing on value cards that I can anticipate players having breakout seasons and just kind of holding for some point during the season where I can try and flip it.
Some final thoughts, Brennan. Tell the people where they can find you. What sort of what you're putting out there as far as content these days.
Sure. So I have an article going up tomorrow. On the last couple of shows, we have introduced the concept of a market cap for a player. And so I've actually created a pretty lengthy article, both reintroducing that and also applying it to both LeBron James rookie cards back in 2003, comparing each of the sets together, and then also comparing Dak Prescott to Deshaun Watson and seeing what the market cap can tell us about whether or not there's room to grow for Dak, or if maybe he's already seen his prices come up enough to where it's more risky than it's worth. So that article is going up tomorrow on RotoGrinders.com. I've spent a lot of time gathering that data. It's not easy data to get, but the more and more we look at those numbers, I think the more and more questions we're going to be able to answer. If you want to find me, you can find me on Twitter at the DFS Advisor. It's probably the best place to reach me. I'm going to jump into the RotoGrinders sports card Discord as well throughout the day. And since Geoff talked about him, I will show off I don't know if you can see it. I just had a Giannis come in, a PSA 9, totally certified. I couldn't quite afford the Prism. They're a little bit out of my budget, but that card came in and it looks really nice. So I agree on Giannis. The difference in population is really, I think, a big deal. So I'm pretty excited about that. But yeah, it's where you can find me. I'm looking forward to it.
What did you pay for it?
I got that one for $200, and I actually, it's not one I think the Market Movers has as a popular charted card. But the nice thing about Market Movers is you can chart any card, and so you type in the year, the set, the grade, and I believe I had seen it going for around 180 to 220 over the last 30 days. So I got a pretty good deal on it. And Giannis is a long-term hold, like Geoff said. He's already solidified himself as an MVP talent, and the rings could potentially come as early as this year. So I definitely expect that thing to appreciate over time for sure.
Geoff, tell the people about SCI and the Market Mover subscription and where they can find you on the old interwebs.
Yeah, so SportsCardInvestor.com is where all of it lives. We've got a bunch of great articles and content and videos up there as well, but the membership program is the basis for how you get into the Market Movers data tool. I've got a couple different levels of membership, and you're going to want the Market Movers level of membership if you want that access to that data tool. And again, coupon code GRINDERS is a special deal we've set up with RotoGrinders where listeners to the show get 20% off their first payment. That applies either if you go monthly or if you go annual. You get 20% off the entire year. So check that out. Again, SportsCardInvestor.com.
And a reminder about the virtual sports card convention. What's the date on that?
Yeah, it starts July 29th. So on SportsCardInvestor.com, click the virtual 2020, register for that as well. It is free to register.
Simon, where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Yeti Boom Films, or you can find me in the RG Sports Card Discord. And make sure to keep checking back on the sports card section of the RotoGrinders homepage. We're putting up a few articles a week, putting up a couple videos as well. We got that Brennan article coming out tomorrow. Josh Wysocki just put up one today, so keep an eye out on those. And I put one up on Monday, so we got a lot of content on there right now relevant to today's sports cards.
Thank you to Brennan. Thank you to Geoff. Thank you to Simon. Thank you to everybody out there watching. I'm Dean. Hope you enjoyed it. This was Sports Card Grinders. We're out of here. Holler.